everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Joe Evans.
I'm Roy Kennedy.
I'm Z Garcia.
Today we're talking about a new trading card game. You know, I keep calling them collectible card games, but they phased that term out like 10 years ago.
I think
they
got
goes
a little
by both.
I think collectible card game sounds a little more predatory, maybe, than trading card game.
But like you mentioned, do people trade them anymore?
Yeah.
No,
Ooh.
I don't think
Not-
so.
Ooh.
It's not as
I think
often.
the last time I traded a card.
No, I mean
No,
at
that's-
school. You know?
But that thought feels nostalgic. Whereas
Right.
collectible just feels like my wallet is evaporating in front of my eyes.
That is a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, you're right. Anyway, we're talking about Star Wars Unlimited. Yeah, that's the name. It's not a great name, but this is from Fantasy Flight Games. And I'll say straight up going into this, I was not particularly pumped about it. I was like, I'll just give it a try. Because Fantasy Flight, like it or hate their game, they usually have pretty solid systems in their games.
Do.
And they'll at least support it for a couple years.
Yeah.
And I like Star Wars. I'm not as slavishly devoted to Star Wars as I once was, but I still like Star Wars.
Feel that.
So we got the starter decks. We played them. I also made bought a booster box and made some decks out of that and played that. So that's kind of what we're basing this on. Here's a real quick overview of how it plays. In this game, you're going to build a deck. And to build a deck, you need a leader, which is a double-sided card. It has a leader on one side, and then a unit that leader can become on the other. And you need a location here. And the leader and location is going to provide you with up to 3 different symbols. And these symbols are going to allow you to build your deck. You can put almost any card you want in your deck, but cards that do not have symbols that match that color are going to cost more for each symbol that doesn't match. So there's all sorts of leaders that you can get and all sorts of different locations, although most of the locations in the game are fairly generic and just add that one color icon. You don't need one of these sheets, but the starter deck comes with one. A place to put your leader and your base. I said location, your base here. Your base has a certain number of hit points. Most of them have 30 hit points. And then you're going to take your deck and you're going to shuffle your deck and you will draw 6 cards. Now of these 6 cards, you're going to pick 2 of these cards and you're going to play them face down as resources. You'll never use them the rest of the game, but these resources you will exhaust to bring things into play. One person goes first and they're going to have the initiative counter. And then you're just going to go back and forth on each round. So on each round, you just seek actions until both players pass. The first person to pass can take this initiative counter, which means they'll go first in the following round. One thing you can do is you can bring a new unit into play. The cost of the unit's up here, so this would cost 2. So I'd exhaust both of these. This is a ground unit. I would put it over here, while other units that you'll get over the course of the game would be space units, and you would put them on the other side. So maybe I get this wing leader, and that's a vehicle goes over there. Here's Leia, maybe she gets played over here. You can also, sometimes you'll find equipment like Luke's lightsaber, and I can give that to Leia. Maybe she needs the lightsaber. And there are ways to give characters and different people on the board can have shields placed on them, or they can have experience placed on them, which just basically adds 1 to their attack power and 1 to their hit points. When you bring someone in play, they start exhausted, and that's one of the main things you do as an action. Once the units are not exhausted, you can use a unit as an action, exhaust it, and attack somebody. Space units can only attack space units. Ground units can only attack ground units, but either unit can attack the base. If you attack the base, you'll do that much damage to it. The first person to destroy their opponent's base is the winner. If you attack somebody else on the other side, so let's say Leia Organa decides to attack Darth Vader. Darth Vader has 5 attack. He's going to kill Leia because she only has 3 hit points. And Leia will do 5 damage to him. And the starter set comes with counters that you can use to keep track of damage from round to round. When someone is defeated, they go to the discard pile. Now, once players have run out of actions on their turn, they are going to draw 2 more cards from their deck. They're going to unexhaust all their cards, or ready their cards it's called, and they're allowed to put one of their cards in play from their hand as another resource. So every round you can add another resource. Some cards especially your leaders, have epic actions. And when you have enough resources, they can come into play as a unit. When they're destroyed, they'll go back to being your leader. Although as a leader, for example, Luke Skywalker can spend a resource and exhaust himself to give a shield token to a rebel unit that you played this phase. And that's the game. You're just going to be constantly going through and playing these different cards. Some cards are tactics, which just kills a non-leader unit. But I'm going to show you some stuff that's in each of the decks. You see the Chewbacca, Security Force, X-Wing, C-3PO. You can have multiple. If there's a dot in front of their name, you can have multiple in a deck, but you can only ever have one in play at a time. So I just showed you the light side deck. The dark side, here's Vader's, Advanced TIE Fighters, a card I Am Your Father you can play, Snowtrooper Lieutenants, Admiral Moti. And once you start buying starter packs, you will find all sorts of cool cards that you'll be able to use and mix in and make your own decks. That's how you play. So that's a quick overview, and I think one of the reasons it's quick is because the game is not complex at all.
It's not complex. Yeah, it's a fairly straightforward game. It doesn't try to reinvent the wheel, does it? That's one of the big things about this game is it doesn't really set out to make, do one of those like forget everything you think you know about trading card games.
Right.
Like, no. This is we're doing a lot of stuff other games do, right?
Yeah, a lot of how everything works, even like the strategies feel very similar. It's like, okay, gotta build up board control, gotta make sure my decks have good curve to them, gotta do all that stuff. But there are some interesting things that I think set this apart in some ways. I feel like they've tried to improve it.
Yeah.
I think didn't go as deep into Magic as you guys have, but I did like the fact that I think the decks are smaller, it's 50 compared to 60 or whatever, and put them together. I think like 3 cards out of 4, little things like that, and also playing the card as a resource face down. You don't have to depend on certain land cards or whatever.
Oh, for sure.
I like that, and I think that makes the game move so much quicker.
Well, that's the big thing about this game is the speed of it is enhanced by the fact that you start with 2 resources.
Right.
Yes.
And every turn you draw 2, which means if there's any characters that let you draw cards, and there are some, they are bonuses. They're not necessities, unlike other Lorcana games.
Other Lorcana games, like in general.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, for Lorcana and even Magic, anything that lets you draw cards,
It's
you're like,
huge.
oh!
Yes.
And don't get me wrong,
2 cards.
again, drawing cards in Star Wars Unlimited is also good,
Card advantage is a big deal. still.
but getting 2 and playing a resource every turn is not, it's a much better decision. Your first 3 or 4 turns, you're like, I'll take 2, worst card, resource. Not a problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Later on, you're like, maybe I'll keep both cards because I can play both.
Yes.
I've played so many collectible card games growing up, and there's a lot of things that they've done with this that I think are really cool, like little twists. I mean, overall, the mechanics are not innovative, but what they've done to make the game speed up is really cool. Like, you start basically on turn 2. It's like if you're used to playing Magic or playing any of these other collectible card games, you start with 2 resources in play, which just means that at the beginning of the game, you have more choices. You're choosing which cards you're going to use as those resources. You're choosing which of those cards to play. The fact that you have a character that has an ability that normally costs like 1 means, I can play a character that costs 1 and use my character's ability. There's just those interesting decisions that you start off the get-go. And the fact that you're drawing 2 cards, it's like, which ones do I want to build? Which ones do I want to play out? It just feels like it has way more punchy, meaningful decisions in this game than in a lot of other collectible card games. But yeah.
And it makes for good decisions later, like do you want to spend those extra resources and build those up or just play the cards? I also love the leaders in this. I love bringing the leaders out. I love the way that works, and how asymmetric those guys are.
That's the one different thing about this than other games.
I think so. I don't think I've seen, because everything else is, they kind of took the resource management from like Versus System and Call of Cthulhu. Call of Cthulhu kind of feels like that. Okay, cool. Draw 2, play 1, whatever. Everything is sort of comes from somewhere. You can kind of trace that back, but I think the leader, whatever it is, the back of the card gives you an ability. At some point, you can bring that person out, and then if they do, bite the dust, then they come back on that one side again, and that's it. You can't bring them back out again.
Right.
It's got a little bit of a Commander feel, maybe.
Okay.
One time you can do one time. It's a cool idea. I like that one.
To that end, so if you're watching this and you are a board gamer, as our channel is for board gamers, and you might say, I don't know that I want to get into this game because of the collectible nature of it. You're buying booster packs, and there's rares and ultra rares and super ultra rares, whatever. I will say that the starter decks, the Darth Vader versus Luke, first of all, even if you do want to collect the game, you need to buy those because that's the only place to get Darth Vader and Luke as leaders.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
But that
So
is not a
far.
particularly
big
expensive
characters.
set to buy. You get 2 full decks,
Right.
and they are competitive decks. So last night I was at the Magic the Gathering store, and I was asking around, the collectible card game people what they thought about it, and they were like, wow, those decks are pretty strong out the gate. Now, in the meta, I'm sure the meta will come up with decks that are better and everything. But it also feels like a really fun, balanced game. If you forget about the whole trading card nature of it,
Yeah.
you could buy just those 2 starter decks. They have nice mats that explain the keywords on them very easily. It's a good 2-player game, and you could be finished because those decks also have the characters you want.
Yes.
It's Luke and Han and Chewbacca and R2-D2 and C-3PO and Yoda, and then the Emperor's and Darth Vader's deck and TIE Fighters and stuff. It feels like, there's other characters like Boba Fett and other ones that you might want those and buying packs, but those starter decks are really solid.
I agree.
When I first played the Decipher Star Wars collectible card game that came out in the 90s, you had a bunch of trash.
Well, that mentality has really changed. I remember when a starter deck for a game would be like, oh, this game, an official deck has 50 cards. Here's the starter deck. It's 40 cards, so it's not even legal out of the box. And it was semi-random. Remember those? It would be like 20 cards are set, the other 20 are random. This might not work, at all. It might be a janky mess. This is good to go. You are right. This feels like dual decks when they used to do that for Magic the Gathering. One of my favorite formats they ever had. You can just buy this and forget the rest. You can play with this for a while without worrying about it. I'm with you. This is one of the best starting products I've seen in a long time.
And one of the things too is I felt like as you're playing the cards, I mean maybe it's just the fact that those starter decks are so good. I was like, man, all these cards are viable. I was like, man, these cards seem like they can all be played. Because, a lot of times when you get collectible card games, you get so much chaff and commons and uncommons that are just like, man, I should just not play this card. I'll put it as a resource and never play it. But there's meaningful decisions when all your cards are actually good.
Yeah.
So I was looking at my hand being like, wow, which ones of these do I actually play? Which ones do I build for resources? And those are just those good angst points in a collectible card game for sure.
Now, we'll tell you 2 things. Number 1, the artwork is very all across the board.
That's what I want.
And it's just because you put 2 Han Solos next to each other and you're like, oof.
When I saw this
it's
game,
rough.
I did not want to play it at all. I didn't want to play it. And the thing is, I normally love Fantasy Flight graphic design. I love their artwork, and I love it in all of their other Star Wars games. I was showing Tom, I put a Stormtrooper right with from the Star Wars deck building game right beside a Stormtrooper from this game, and I feel like the Star Wars deck building game looks so much better. I just love the way there's more consistent artwork. I love the graphic design on their other Star Wars products, but this one just looks flat and dull to me. It looks like they're maybe trying to go for a 90s nostalgic look, but I would rather it look more modern. I don't know.
I think I was talking about this last night. I think it is more modern. I think this is more of a Gen Z type look in games. It's definitely Fantasy Flights because this reminds me a lot of the newest Descent game too.
I don't like that. I don't like that either.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I think this is the direction our art's taking.
I will say I'm the one outlier here when it comes to the look. I like the look of the game.
Do you?
I'll agree that yes, there's some pieces of artwork that are not as good as others.
Yeah.
Like that one Han Solo, you're right. It's
That's the rough
what?
one.
It
The
seems-
comic booky one.
It seems
Yeah.
less polished. There's less work done into it. Even the Star Wars deck building game has like shadows behind the text and stuff. All this different watermarks and stuff like that on different things. It's wow, the graphic design on this just has less work.
I think it's
in it.
inconsistent though, regardless whether you like
No,
it or
it
not.
is,
It's
but that's-
definitely. I mean, Magic does
It's
that.
hard to do that in a trading card game
Sure.
because of the
Different artists.
volume. If you're
Yeah.
doing the deck building game, there are 90 pieces of art or whatever in there. That's it, forever, unless they make an expansion. But in a trading card game, the volume necessitates multiple people working on it, and I like that sort of cell shaded, cartoony look. There's something about it that is very vibrant to me that I like. With again, yes, there's a couple of pieces that you look at and you go, I don't like that one as much. That's going to happen when you look at so many pieces of artwork.
One thing I will say is the artwork does, I mean, there are great pieces in there, which the theme of this is where it just drips theme to the point to where when I'm playing, sometimes I won't go for the win as much as this would be awesome if I could
Sounds like
just
an
force. Yeah, I mean, I could force choke Luke. It's not my best move, but I want to do it, you know? And you've got Roy right to your right going, you're not going to win that way. I'm like, doesn't matter. I'm going to force choke him right here. It's just, I love the theme of this, you know? Every card, it really works.
Yeah, if you like Star Wars, I think you'll like it. I think the deck building aspect is so easy. I mean, I sorted out all the cards.
Even for me.
From like a booster box, and I grabbed the leader, a base, and was like, those are the 3 colors. I like this, I like this, I like this. Have some high, have some low. And yes, I'm sure they're not great decks, they're not fine-tuned or anything, but also, like
work.
you guys saying, every card, I'm like, you can use that.
I agree.
I never looked at a card and thought, that card is just bad.
Which hurts when you have to discard them for resources. I love those decisions.
That is a good decision, and we haven't talked a ton about the gameplay, but I think it's just such a tight game. Yes, it can get to the point where maybe 5 minutes before the game's over, you're like, I can't win. Or, you know, that
Yeah, I
gets to
didn't
that
find
point.
that to be too much of a problem. But yeah, speaking of the gameplay, there's a couple of things we should talk about. Space versus ground
Right,
units.
yes, for sure.
Very interesting, having 2 battlefields, having the ability to attack across that battlefield or the opponent's base. That
Right.
feels distinct. And then the other one, the big one, and this is a big one. I take an action, you take an action, I take an action, you
love
take
that.
an action. That is
Quick.
incredibly beneficial to the cadence of the game. In most trading card games, you take a turn.
Yeah.
And I sit there, assuming I have responses that are built into it, then I play. And we get into timing window garbage.
Yeah.
You know what I
Ashes
mean?
goes back and forth real quick like that.
Yeah.
It's not going to really be a timing stack here. What do they call
I
it?
don't think so. Like a chain or anything like that? I don't think so.
Because there aren't responses in the game like
Right,
that
not
I
so
have
far.
seen, you know, so.
No, it
So
just
fast.
moves along at a nice clip. It immediately
Really
feels
does.
more like a board game. And because those starting decks are so solid, you can just get this and be like, it's a card game. It's not, forget trading, forget all that. This versus this, done, go.
QST.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things too is the initiative in the game as well. Sometimes that can be really important. If you're like, oh, I have lethal on the board if I pass right now. There was a moment where I'm like, oh, I could play out more stuff, but I get to go first. If I'm the first one to pass, I'm going to pass. Go ahead, you know? So there's
Yeah,
interesting
but then you get
decisions
to
there
do
as
that
well.
cool thing. Sentinel really matters in this
Yeah, for
game.
sure.
It's an ability that on a character you can't attack the base unless you attack that person, and I like that. That's again taking from Hearthstone.
Yeah, very
You know,
much
Hearthstone has that
taunt-ish.
same sort of thing, but that sort of stuff just works well. They took the good stuff from a bunch of other games. Now, for recommendations, let's do recommendations. What's your rating?
Okay, so I went into this game not expecting to like it. I almost was like, I don't want to like it, just because I wasn't a fan of the graphic design, I wasn't a fan of the art. But then I played the game and I'm like, holy smokes, this is like the greatest hits of trading card games overall. And I mean, Star Wars, I enjoy Star Wars, but it's not my biggest thing. I'm giving this an 8 overall. I really like the way the game plays. I think there's extremely meaningful decisions. I love how quick the pace is. I love how quick and snappy the turns are back and forth. I think the deck building stuff is great. I think just the way it works all together is like really, really good. And most trading card games, I'm right around that score or lower than this. So this is my favorite Disney-themed trading card game, for sure. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it's a great game.
Shots fired.
I definitely like it more than Lorcana.
What you just said is my main thing, and I'm gonna give it an 8.5. I'm between that and a 9. I'm gonna give it an 8.5. The thing you said, the greatest hits thing, is absolutely
Yeah, for
what
sure.
was my takeaway. The more I experienced the game, the more I kept thinking to myself, okay, so this is from this game, and this is from that game. This is kind of new, but this is from this game. It feels like a greatest hits compilation. Like they played a bunch of these games where they just have this experience and they went, I like that resource management system. I like this combat mode. I like that. I like when damage sticks around. The games that do that well, so I'll do that. It just comes together so well. I don't have a problem with the artwork personally. I like the way it looks. I like the starter decks. I think those are great, and kudos to them for putting out a product that stands on its own. You do not immediately have to jump down that rabbit hole. I'm glad that it doesn't come with like, here's a sample booster, which feels, again, a little predatory. You can just get that, start playing, you're good to go. Everything about it is good. It's not innovative. That's about the worst thing I can say about it. Is that bad? I don't think so, especially when it comes to this style and genre of games. So if you're a Star Wars fan and you don't despise trading card games, you should get the starter.
All right, I'm coming. I said a lot of positive. I love the game. It's so fast in the fact that I went in there to play a different game. Chris was behind. Tom was sitting at his desk. I said, hey, run through this. And like 2 games happened quick. I love that. However, I cannot separate the fact that it's a CCG. For me, that ceiling is I'm going to give it a 7 because I love the system. This is one that if a friend has it and they love it, they're totally enthralled with it, I will go to their house and I'll play it. It'd be great. I will not invest in the system because the CCG, for me, it's just going down that track, keeping If this was an LC,
if the cards were print and play?
But if the cards were print and play, it'd be all over it for $5.
Just asking for a friend.
But I can't blame the business for doing this because there aren't that many high-selling, if any, dueling LCGs. But if it was an LCG, I'd be all about it. I'd buy every single one that came out. This would be like my top 2-player duel game. I mean, this would be it for me. It would be way up there. But because it's a CCG, I don't want to get invested in the ecosystem. I love the game, but I don't love it enough to actually step into a CCG and eventually jump in.
All right, well, I will jump into the CCG. I have.
Yes.
Again, I went into this I was way more excited about Lorcana than about this. And this for me killed Lorcana. I don't know, I'll play Lorcana again. I like the Disney theming of Lorcana, but I like Star Wars. So that, you guys have mentioned a little bit, if you're not a Star Wars fan, this probably isn't a game for you.
Sure.
Right.
Because you got to like Star Wars at least a little. It's a very good game, but I mean, otherwise you're like, oh, who is this Darth Vader guy? Most people know who he is, but you know what I mean?
No, I agree with you. I'm even less of a Star Wars fan than you are. You've kind of like cooled on it. I definitely am like a passing Star Wars fan, but you got to like it a little. Yeah.
Well, this reignited my liking of Star Wars,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
I was having fun. I'm like, oh, yeah, this character, this is fun. And so the back and forth, I really enjoy. I don't know if it's in my rating yet. It's an 8.5. I really like it. But I really liked getting that booster box and going, because every booster pack comes with another leader.
Oh, nice.
That's really cool.
And that's really, and a location.
Yeah.
And so it's really easy, if nothing else, to say, this leader's out, this leader's in, the rest of the deck is the same. As long as the colors match up, which you can do.
Yes, right.
And it was so easy to build decks. I was like, I can put black, green, and red cards. Well, these red cards are cool, these green cards are good, these black cards, here's black, green cards, black, red cards, done. It was so fast to build a deck, and I don't have to sit there and go, okay, I need 30 lands, and, what's the ratio? I'm not
Yes.
quite sure.
And as opposed to what Joey's saying, where he's like worried about jumping into it, I'm excited for the future of this game because I can see the design space built into it.
Right.
I mean, even just even the locations, they're basically blank right now. It says 30 health, blank, most of them.
There's a couple that have
There's a
25
couple of
health and a
them.
special ability.
Yeah, but it's like, there is a ton of design space right there.
I'm also, though, not afflicted by the collectible bug in this regard. Like, I don't care about the chase cards or the super rares. If I get a foil and you have a non-foil, I'll probably trade with you. Because,
Trading card game, done. There we go.
There you go.
Back.
but it has a lot of stuff, but you're right. There's a lot of stuff I'm like, ooh. I mean, when the Mandalorian set comes out, you're going to want to play it.
I definitely want to play it.
I'm thinking a Grogu deck.
If I was going to jump into a CCG, hands down, this would be it.
Yeah, so I find it to be a lot of fun. And a lot of people in the comments will probably be like, I hate CCGs, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think it's, I think you get a decent value in those packs. You get a lot of cards. It was maybe 15. I might be wrong. It might be 12. But there's a lot of cards in the pack. But you don't have to do that. I'm telling you, you can buy the starter packs as a game itself, and you will not be like, oh, I wish I had more. I mean, that would be a you thing then, right?
Right.
I agree.
There's lots of two-player
It would be a
card
me
games you can
thing.
buy, and this one is Star Wars, the two-player card game.
Yep.
There's also more. But you can ignore the more if you want to. I don't want to ignore the more. I want to get it. I very rarely buy stuff for a collectible card game, but this is one. And then, as our final thing before we got, though, at this point in time, the entire print run is sold out.
Oh,
So
really?
it is.
You cannot get them until Fantasy Flight gets them all reprinted, but you can get the starter decks. So that's what we're telling you to get now.
Yeah.
Not that I was looking to buy some more. Of
course you
That's
were.
not the point.
It got him.
But anyway, so that's Star Wars Unlimited. I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Joy Evans.
I'm Roy Kennedy.
I'm Z Garcia.
May the Force be with you.
And
with
you.
you.
Always.